Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some seriously thought-provoking stuff today.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys sent us this work by philosopher Éric Sadin.
Hmm.
And the title alone, The Age of the Tyrannical Individual, it kind of grabs you, doesn't it?
It really does.
So we're going to unpack that, see what Sadin's getting at with this whole idea of a tyrannical individual.
And I think it's really interesting what he observed,
Yeah.
particularly looking back at the 2010s.
Oh, absolutely. Like, he was looking into some kind of, I don't know, unsettling crystal ball.
Right.
Because he talks about this shift in society,
Yeah.
not just in our institutions, but just in our attitudes, like across the board.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like things were shifting, but it wasn't always clear exactly how.
Right. Like that feeling you get when you're, I don't know, about to walk into a room where something big just happened.
Exactly. You can sense it, that something's different,
Mm.
but you can't quite put your finger on it.
And Sadin, he really picks up on that vibe.
He does.
Especially when he talks about the rise of distrust.
Oh, yeah.
And not just distrust in governments, because we've seen that before.
Yours. That's nothing new.
But distrust in, like, everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Political parties, media, even like those big global organizations,
It's like nobody was safe.
And on top of that, you had this, well,
Go on.
this yearning for a strongman figure.
Oh, tell me about it. And the 2010s definitely delivered on that front.
Right. I mean, you had Brexit.
And, well, we all know who else.
Exactly. And Sandin uses these events, these like political earthquakes, to illustrate what he calls this turn.
This turn.
Yeah, where facts, objective truth, it all kind of took a backseat to the narrative.
The feeling was more important than the facts.
Yeah. And there was this hunger for leaders who embodied anger, frustration, even if they threw the rule book out the window.
Because it was about something deeper, something emotional.
Exactly. It was like the whole stick it to the man ethos went global.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
nobody could really agree on who the man even was anymore. Oh, I love that because it's so true. So we've got this distrust, this anger, this yearning for something different.
And this is where Sadin gets really interesting.
Okay, hit me with it.
He argues that this tyrannical individual he's talking about, it's not some new phenomenon.
Oh, really?
It's the culmination of centuries of what he calls liberal individualism.
Okay, so we got to unpack that a little.
We do.
Because individualism, on the surface, it doesn't sound so bad.
No.
I mean, individual freedom, right? Most people would say they're all for that.
Absolutely. It's kind of the cornerstone of, well, a lot of modern societies, right?
So where do things go off the rails? When does individualism turn tyrannical?
Well, Sadin takes us back to the roots,
Okay.
back to thinkers like John Locke, who believed in individual freedom, absolutely. But
There's always a but.
there is. Locke also believed that this freedom had to exist within a framework of shared values.
Okay, so it's not just about doing whatever you want whenever you want.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You have the freedom to build your dream house,
Okay, I like this analogy.
but that doesn't give you the right to burn down your neighbor's house just because it's blocking your view.
Right. Your freedom ends where someone else's begins.
Precisely. And Sadin argues that somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
we lost sight of that balance between individual freedom and the well-being of the collective.
We forgot about the common good.
In a way, yes.
So when did things start to shift? What happened?
Well, Sadin points to the rise of consumerism in the 1960s as a turning point.
Interesting. Consumerism. Okay.
It's like suddenly individuality became less about actively shaping your destiny,
Yeah.
Through civic engagement and stuff.
Yeah, participating in democracy, all that jazz.
Exactly. And it became more about expressing yourself through what you bought, your stuff.
Oh, I see. Like the whole treat yourself mentality.
Yes.
Buy the shoes because you deserve it.
And hey, I get it. It's a tempting mindset, right?
Absolutely. It's everywhere.
Right. But Sadin's point is that this seemingly harmless treat yourself culture actually fueled political disengagement.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. I never thought about it like that.
It's like instead of engaging in the messy world of collective action, we retreated into this pursuit of personal satisfaction through consumption.
So we traded in town hall meetings for trips to the mall.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Oh.
And this is where technology enters the picture.
Ah, yes, technology, because we can't talk about individualism without talking about, well, the internet, social media, all of that.
Exactly. And Sadin argues that technology acted as both a catalyst and a distorting mirror, to this whole individualistic shift that was already underway.
Okay, so technology didn't create this individualistic streak, but it amplified it.
Exactly. And it's not just the internet, it goes back further.
Oh, okay, I'm listening.
Think about the rise of personal computers.
Yeah, back in the day.
Suddenly, you had this incredible power right at your fingertips in your own home,
True, true.
reinforcing this idea of self-sufficiency.
Like you didn't need anyone else. You had your computer.
Right. And pair that with the whole just do it ethos of the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah, good point.
And you have this recipe for a very specific flavor of individualism.
What do you mean?
One where relying on others, depending on systems, it's seen as weak.
Oh, wow, I never thought about it like that.
It's all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, being your own brand.
And technology just gave us more tools to do that.
Exactly. But then the internet came along.
And that's where things really took off.
Right, because the internet, it came with all this promise.
It did, this idea of connecting everyone, democratizing information.
Breaking down barriers.
Exactly. It felt revolutionary.
It did. And that's the paradox that Sadin highlights.
What do you mean?
The internet had this incredible potential, but instead of a utopia of shared knowledge and global connection,
Yeah.
we ended up with, well,
You mean echo chambers, information bubbles, everyone shouting their opinions into the void?
yes, and don't forget the constant need for self-expression and validation.
Oh, the validation. Gotta get those likes.
Right. Sandin's me generation was practically born online,
Sharing every thought, feeling, latte art,
instantly, and with filters.
which, and maybe this is ironic,
Yeah.
it can actually make you feel more isolated.
How so?
Well, because you're so busy crafting your online persona, chasing those likes, that you forget about genuine human connection.
You're performing connection instead of actually connecting.
Exactly. It's a weird paradox.
A fascinating contradiction. And this is where things start to really unravel, where we enter what Sadin calls a breakdown of common ground.
Ooh, okay, tell me more about this breakdown.
We've lost that ability,
What do you mean?
to tell a shared story
Okay.
about who we are, where we're going as a society.
It's like we've all retreated into our own little customized realities.
Exactly. And this is where those consequences of all that unchecked individualism, they really start to show.
Okay, so how does this breakdown of common ground, how does it actually play out?
Well, Sadin argues that we're witnessing this erosion.
Erosion.
Yeah, of shared values,
Okay.
shared narratives, even a belief in the idea of collective progress.
Because why bother with collective progress when you're so focused on, like, your own individual success, right?
Right, it's like we're all playing different games.
With different rule books.
Exactly. And inevitably, those games, they collide.
And that's when things get messy.
It gets messy fast. And this is where Sadin points to the rise of what he calls post-truth.
Post-truth. Okay, we hear that term thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean in this context?
Well, for Sadin, it's about personal narratives being given more weight than objective facts.
So feeling right matters more than being right.
Sadly, yes. And it's a breeding ground for this tyrannical individualism.
Because if everyone gets to create their own reality bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and if you try to, like, pop that bubble by pointing out facts,
You become the enemy.
you're the one who's wrong.
Exactly. It's this potent cocktail,
A cocktail.
of resentment,
Sure.
often fueled by very real systemic failures.
Right, it's not like people are just making this stuff up in a vacuum.
Exactly. But that resentment gets mixed with this unwavering belief in the absolute righteousness of one's own individual experience.
So you're not just wrong, you're morally wrong.
And any authority or system that doesn't align with your worldview,
It's gotta go.
exactly.
Yeah.
Experts are dismissed, institutions are demonized.
It's like everyone's retreating into their own little fortified bunker.
And that brings us to the crux of Sadin's argument, the emergence of the tyrannical individual.
Oh, okay, so we've been dancing around this term, but let's really dig into it. Are we talking about dictators, like authoritarian regimes in the traditional sense?
Not quite. It's more insidious than that.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Sadin describes these individuals as being driven by this deep sense of being wronged.
Wronged.
Yeah, like they're owed something that's been denied to them.
And they're not going to take it anymore.
They've lost faith in collective solutions.
Because it's all rigged, right? The system's out to get them.
Right. And they're ready to tear the whole system down,
Even if they don't know what to replace it with.
often without a clear vision for what comes next.
And this is where social media comes in, right?
Absolutely. It becomes this weaponized platform.
They're all that anger and frustration.
Exactly. It's easier to fire off an angry tweet than it is to actually organize a protest or join a political party.
Because you get that instant gratification, right? That feeling of being heard.
Even if it's just by an echo chamber of like-minded individuals.
Okay, so we've got tyrannical individuals fueled by resentment, distrust, and this post-truth reality. Where does fascism fit into all of this?
Well, Sadin argues that we're witnessing a new, more individualized form of fascism.
What do you mean? How can fascism be individualized?
It's not about a single party or a charismatic leader, not in the traditional sense.
Okay.
It's fueled by this collective sense of disillusionment, this thirst for retribution.
So it's less about marching in unison and more about this shared rage, this desire to just burn it all down.
Exactly. He points to things like the Yellow Vest protests.
Oh, interesting.
These eruptions of anger, of rejection, but without this cohesive vision for the future.
So where do we go from here? That's what I want to know. If everyone's a tyrant in their own mind, how do we even begin to rebuild?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It feels pretty impossible some days.
Sadin doesn't offer any easy answers, but he does present us with a choice.
Okay, I'm listening. Lay it on me.
We can either succumb to this cycle of anger and isolation, each of us retreating further into our own echo chamber.
There's got to be an or here.
Hard.
Come on, you can't leave me hanging. Give me a glimmer of hope here.
Or we can choose to re-engage with the idea of a shared society.
Okay, but how do we even begin to do that in a world where everyone feels like they're at war with everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to feel powerless in all of this, like we're just along for this bumpy ride.
And I think that's where Sadin actually offers a bit of hope.
Oh, do tell.
He reminds us that this hyper-individualism, it wasn't inevitable.
What do you mean? It happened. This shift through these very specific historical and technological changes, but there were moments, points along the way, where things could have gone in a totally different direction.
Oh, interesting, like those sliding door moments in history, where one decision, one event could have sent us on a whole other course.
Exactly. And that's actually, I think, a hopeful thought.
How so?
Well, it means we're not just passengers on this, runaway train.
We have some agency.
We do. Individually, but also collectively.
So we can still get off this track.
We can choose to make different choices, to steer things in a new direction.
Okay, so where do we even begin? I mean, practically speaking.
Right, because it's easy to get overwhelmed by all of this.
Do we all need to, ditch our smartphones, go off the grid, and start a barter system?
Well, hey, if that's your thing, go for it.
I'll stick to online banking for now, but I appreciate the sentiment.
But in all seriousness, what Sadin seems to be advocating for is more fundamental.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's a shift in our mindset, really.
A mindset shift. Okay, so less about external changes and more about internal ones.
Exactly. He talks about re-engaging with this idea of a shared society.
Shared society. I like the sound of that.
It's about understanding that our well-being, your well-being, it's deeply connected to the well-being of everyone around us.
So less every man for himself and more we're all in this together. That thing that humans used to be kind of good at.
Exactly. And it starts small,
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine, really listening in a conversation, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but trying to actually understand the other person's point of view.
Radical, I know.
Or seeking out perspectives that are different from your own, even if they make you a little uncomfortable.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. But it's about reclaiming something, I think, that we've been losing for a while now.
And that is?
Our shared humanity.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect place to sort of bring it back to our listeners,
What do you mean?
Well, think about your own day-to-day interactions, right? Both online and offline.
Yeah. Are you contributing to this sense of connection, of shared purpose? Or are you, maybe unintentionally, reinforcing those walls of isolation that Sadin talks about?
That's a powerful question.
It is. And it leads us to Sadin's final point, his challenge to all of us, really. He argues that all of this intense individualism, it hasn't created a true society.
Okay.
What we have now is more like, and this is his word, a constellation of beings.
A constellation of beings. Okay, I like that.
Each of us shining brightly in our own right, but without a real meaningful connection to each other or a shared sense of purpose.
It's a striking image.
It is. And on that note, that image of a constellation of beings, we're going to leave you all to ponder that for yourselves.
Lots to think about.
This has been quite the deep dive. Until next time, remember, even when it feels like we're drifting further apart.
Which it often does these days.
It does. It really does. But we're all in this together, folks.